This is Right to Life Radio with John Girardi on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of the Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
Well, Xavier Becerra has been confirmed as our new HHS secretary, and there's some news to get to on the abortion front. But today on the show, I want to talk about a topic that doesn't get enough coverage for those of us who are pro-lifers in California. Now, a lot of times on this show, I've done these kind of evergreen episodes, these topics that are always sort of continuingly relevant for the pro-life issue for us here at Right to Life of Central California. We've often done shows talking about Roe v. Wade. We've often done shows talking about the constitutional law underpinnings of legal abortion in America and on a national scale. But something that we don't talk about very much are the legal underpinnings for abortion in the state of California. Now, obviously, we have this overriding federal mandate for abortion that emanates from Roe v. Wade, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, Doe v. Bolton, which requires states to have in place legalized abortion more or less for all 9 months of pregnancy and for any reason. And California has laws, state statutes on the books that sort of animate those prescriptions of our federal constitutional law, these Supreme Court decisions that purport to interpret the U.S. Constitution. But let's suppose tomorrow I could snap my finger and Roe v. Wade goes away. I snap my finger and tomorrow the Supreme Court issues a decision overturning Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the whole apparatus of legalized abortion from our federal court system, all of it's overturned. And state governments can do whatever they want. What would happen here in California? The answer is nothing would change in California. California would still maintain a regime of legal abortion. And it's chiefly because of a number of California state Supreme Court decisions and subsequent and changes to the state constitution of the state of California that purport to mandate legal abortion. Now, the source of legal abortion under California's state constitution, this is just a basic thing to understand about how law works in the United States. We have sort of two levels of government, two sovereigns, if you will. You have the United States of America, and then whatever your local state is. In our case, the state of California. For the United States of America, the U.S. Constitution is foundational. Any laws that Congress passes have to emanate from powers vested in Congress by the U.S. Constitution. Okay? The U.S. Constitution sets the parameters of what Congress can do, what the president can do. For California state law, the California state constitution works similarly. The California state constitution sets the parameters of what kinds of laws our state legislature can pass. It sets the standard for the kinds of laws that the governor can enforce, etc. So we have a constitution in California just like the United States has a constitution. And I want to read Article 1, Section 1 of the California State Constitution. All people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. Among these are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. That's the first section of our Constitution, Article 1, Section 1. And this right to you'll notice at the very end of it, we have this word privacy. Now, that is a very, very, very important little word there. Now, this provision of Article 1, Section 1 was amended in California the year after Roe v. Wade in 1974. And let's not forget that Roe v. Wade was premised on the idea that there was a constitutional right to privacy in the U.S. Constitution, even though it's not stated anywhere. They think there was an implicit right to privacy hidden somewhere in the text of the Constitution. In between all those actual written words there's a right to privacy. So the Supreme Court in Roe said that there is a right to privacy that exists in the Constitution, based itself off of a prior Supreme Court decision, Griswold versus Connecticut, and held that abortion was something that was encompassed within that right to privacy. In 1974, the year after Roe v. Wade, the California state constitution was amended, and a right to privacy was explicitly added into the California state constitution. Now, notice we did not include a right to abortion, just a right to privacy. Now, obviously, privacy, that's a pretty vague term. What does it mean that we have a right to privacy? How is that supposed to be interpreted? Well, the California State Supreme Court has basically interpreted the right to privacy guaranteed by Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution as guaranteeing a right to abortion. And from this flows just a lot of really bad California policies, because California's State Supreme Court, like, if you think of the worst instances of judicial activism to ever take place in the history of this country, if you think of Roe v. Wade, if you think of other really terrible Supreme Court decisions, the idea was the justices on the Supreme Court enacting their policy preferences, basically taking a text from the Constitution, completely unmooring it from the historical context in which it was passed, the accepted public meaning of that text at the time it was adopted, any sort of notion of originalism or anything like that, or even any kind of more traditional legal theory, and instead importing into that text our modern-day sensibilities, okay? So what Ruth Bader Ginsburg law wanted to do was she wanted to ground abortion rights in equality, basically, in spite of the fact that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment was ratified after the Civil War and was obviously meant to protect certain kinds of equal rights for newly freed African slaves who are now African-American citizens of the United States. And the framers of the 14th Amendment had no sense that they were trying to legalize abortion. Ruth Bader Ginsburg wanted to import her current-day notion that abortion was essential for women's liberty, take that idea, import it into the text of a constitutional amendment that was passed in the late 1860s. Okay, that's kind of the living constitutionalism. You take a text from the late 18th or the 19th century, it has certain terms in it, and you import your own modern-day meanings into those terms. Well, the California State Supreme Court does that quite a bit. And under the guise of doing law, what they really do is enacting policy, enacting the policies that they favored. And the California State Supreme Court has been for a very, very long time extremely left-wing and extremely favorable to abortion rights. So what I have here in my hands, for those of you watching on our YouTube channel, by the way, if you want to catch if you want to watch this show, you can go to youtube.com/righttolifeca. I'm holding in my hands, just doing a little Rush Limbaugh impression there, holding in my hands a printout from the website of the Center for Reproductive Rights. All right, now these folks are big-time abortion advocates. And they have, on a state-by-state basis, this document that says, what if Roe fell? And basically, this is an entity that does not want to see Roe v. Wade ever overturned. And they provide a state-by-state snapshot of what the laws in a given state are and what would happen to legalized abortion if Roe v. Wade fell. And it's actually a very good summary of what the abortion law is in all these different states. In spite of the fact that they are super-duper pro-choice, they actually very accurately reflect what the law is. So here's what they have to say. What if Roe fell? Abortion will remain legal in California. The state's highest court recognized abortion rights under the California Constitution in 1969, 4 years before Roe v. Wade. State law protects the right to personal reproductive decisions. Now, California, they say, has enshrined in statute a protection for abortion as a fundamental right. Okay, the California state legislature finds and declares that every individual possesses a fundamental right of privacy with respect to personal reproductive decisions. Accordingly, it is the public policy of the state of California that A, every individual has the fundamental right to choose or refuse birth control. B, every woman has the fundamental right to choose to bear a child or to choose to obtain an abortion, except as specifically limited in this article. C, the state shall not deny or interfere with a woman's fundamental right to choose to bear a child or to choose to obtain an abortion, except as specifically permitted by this article. They also talk about California having strong state constitutional protections for the right to abortion. This is the thing I'm talking about. California's state constitution has been interpreted as protecting abortion, even though all it says is a right to privacy. The state constitution was amended to include an explicit protection for privacy, and this provision has been interpreted as protecting the right to choose abortion. And that's what I'm talking about. When California in 1974 passed Proposition 7, in 1974, California passes Proposition 7, and it amended the California Constitution to protect a right to privacy. That was the goal. The goal was to protect a right to abortion under the guise of, we're just defending a right to privacy. Who can be opposed to privacy? Everyone likes privacy. I like privacy. You like privacy. Problem is, the word is so vague and amorphous. What private things are we protecting? Apparently we're protecting a right to abortion. Which, by the way, the whole notion of abortion as a private activity and therefore beyond the scope of government regulation, like regulating whether you kiss your wife or something. That's private. The government shouldn't regulate that. No, abortion is very different from that. It's not a private decision. It's in many ways a public decision. You're going to an open to the public clinic or doctor to have the service. It's a question of public health, which state governments have broad rights to regulate. One could argue if you are going to go take the wild step of defining the unborn child as a person, that it involves more than one person. So there's actually nothing about abortion that, in certain ways, there's some aspects of it that's private in the sense that maybe you could argue, well, it's none of your business. But it certainly is the state's business. There are all kinds of other healthcare procedures that involve more private things that involve maybe even fewer persons, which the government feels they have every right to regulate, down to a T, with very broad latitude. Now, it's not just that the California Constitution protects a right to abortion. That's bad enough. The problem is with how our state Supreme Court has taken this loosey-goosey language of protecting, quote, privacy, which means protecting abortion, and has expanded it. It's sort of this difference between, do I have a right? I have a right to keep and bear arms. Okay. Does that mean I have a right to a government program that will purchase my gun for me? Well, no. Okay, there's a difference between having a legal right to own a gun and then having the government have upon itself some kind of legal obligation to furnish you with a gun or to buy a gun for you or to subsidize your purchase of a gun. Or for the government to have an equitable program for people who do or don't. Just because you have a right doesn't mean necessarily you have, on the government's part, a duty for them to help pay for or furnish your right. There's a difference between a right and the ability to access or make use of that right. And when we talk about abortion, a lot of times we elide that distinction. People on the pro-choice side try to elide that distinction because they want abortion to be universally accessible. They want as many people to have abortions as want them. And if they can't afford one, have other people pay for it. If they can't get one because the Catholic hospital nearby won't provide them, then make that Catholic hospital do it, okay? Basically, the notion is let's provide abortion in every circumstance that we can, regardless of someone's ability to pay or not pay. All right, we'll get into this a little bit more, how California mandates taxpayer funding of abortion right after the break. John Girardi on Power Talk 96.7 AM 1400 for Right to Life of Central California. Daft Punk with us here on Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for listening. As always, a production of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org, if you want to learn more about our work. Our good buddy Jonathan Keller is out of town this week, so I'm riding solo. Hope Jonathan gets back soon. All right. Now, in the first segment, I was talking about how the state of California enshrines in its law a legal right to abortion. And the problem of the California Constitution, because it was amended in 1974 right after Roe v. Wade, to include a right to privacy right there in Article 1, Section 1 of the California State Constitution. And this is obviously right after Roe. Roe was interpreted as being based on an alleged right to privacy. So that's obviously how that section of the Constitution has been amended. Now, one of the key ways in which the state of California kind of guarantees abortion and does so, and they guarantee abortion, not just your right to go get abortion, they even protect funding for abortion. They sort of mandate that abortion be covered thanks to a horrible series of Supreme Court decisions going back to 1981, okay? So let's do the history here. In 1976, after Roe v. Wade, the U.S. Congress passes this thing called the Hyde Amendment, okay? And the Hyde Amendment is this very simple premise. The premise of the Hyde Amendment is very straightforward. Whatever people think about abortion, we shouldn't force the American taxpayer to pay for it. And that had broad bipartisan support. Okay, a lot of Democrats agree with that view. A lot of Republicans agree with that view. Even Democrats like one Joseph Biden, for his entire career in the Senate, voted in favor of the Hyde Amendment. His entire career. Continued to support the Hyde Amendment publicly. Supported the Hyde Amendment for all 8 years as Vice President of the United States before changing his position in 2019. So the state of California saw what the U.S. Congress was doing, and the state of California thought, all right, well, maybe we should do the same thing. This is a bipartisan thing, bipartisan agreement. Both sides think Roe v. Wade is, regardless of what both sides think about abortion, both sides kind of agree that you shouldn't force the taxpayer to pay for abortion. So the state of California tried to pass laws to cut off abortion funding. And one of the chief ways in which abortion could be funded through either a federal or a California healthcare program was through the Medicaid, or in California, the Medi-Cal program. Okay, Medicaid is a program that has a different name in each state that it's in. So California's is Medi-Cal. And it's basically publicly subsidized insurance for lower-income persons who meet certain income thresholds and requirements. So initially, Roe becomes legalized. Medi-Cal is paying for abortion. It's being paid with federal money and state money. The Hyde Amendment comes in, stops funding abortion. And then the state legislature in California says, all right, we're going to pass our version of the Hyde Amendment. Well, that gets challenged in the courts by the ACLU. And it gets kicked up all the way to the California State Supreme Court. Now, remember in the last segment, I talked about there's this difference in the law between you have a right to something versus you have a right for the government to pay for something for you, right? You might have a right to keep and bear arms. That doesn't mean you have a right to, have the government buy you a gun. Okay, that's not how that works. And abortion supporters have constantly tried to elide that distinction. They don't want abortion. They want abortion to be as widely and as easily accessible as it possibly can be, with no barriers to entry. If someone can't afford abortion, have taxpayers pay for it. If the only hospital near you is a Catholic hospital, make that Catholic hospital, perform abortions. Knock down any and all barriers to entry as regards abortion. Now, in 1981, the California Supreme Court took on this case whether the state legislature could ban abortion funding, and decided no, actually, it's unconstitutional for the state legislature to ban abortion funding. Because basically that would mean that the state legislature is violating this fundamental right that women have by sort of picking and choosing which options they were and were not going to support. That was the legal rationale. So in spite of the fact that our state legislature had for decades wanted to cut abortion funding, Medi-Cal has always maintained a purely California stream of tax dollars to keep paying for abortion. So this is the challenge we face in California, is that it's not just we have bad laws. We have a horrible Supreme Court that has interpreted our California Constitution in all of these incredibly wrong-headed ways. Now, when we come back, we'll talk about how the California State Supreme Court overturned California laws mandating that minors get permission from their parents before they get an abortion. That's next on Right to Life Radio. Right to Life Radio, John Girardi here. We've got Giorgio Moroder with his song The Chase. Makes me think of old Art Bell, Coast to Coast. Coast to Coast, which is also like here on Power Talk. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening to Right to Life Radio, a production, as always, of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Check out our website. Hey, if you like the show, understand this radio show for all of you is free. But it is not free to get this radio show going. So if you want to support the work of Right to Life of Central California, go to rtlcc.org, click that donate button up there at the top, or you could even join the 300 Club. The 300 Club, which is our wonderful program. Basically, we figure if everyone listening to this show were to give Right to Life of Central California $25 a month, we'd basically never need to fundraise again. And all of the good work we do throughout the course of the year would basically be paid for. $25 a month, that makes $300 a year. So if you go to rtlcc.org, you can check out the 300 Club and join. We have little gifts for our members. We keep you in our newsletter. We acknowledge you on the radio show. It's a really nice thing and a good, solid way for normal middle-class folks to support the work of Right to Life. Hey, if you got your $1,400 stimulus money sitting in your bank account, why not give $300 of it to us? Anyway, rtlcc.org. All right. I've been talking today, and this is kind of supposed to be an evergreen episode. This is something that hopefully you could listen to again and again, especially if you download the podcast after you're done listening to it on the radio. Just search for Right to Life Radio on Apple Podcasts. Yes, we all know that Roe v. Wade legalized abortion nationally, but California's state Supreme Court made a number of terrible decisions that have enshrined really bad abortion laws in our California state law. All right? And this is done in a number of ways. We talked in the last segment about how California's state Supreme Court mandated abortion funding through the Medi-Cal program. Basically said, no, it's discrimination on the part of the government in a way that pressures a woman's decision whether or not to have an abortion for the state to decide that it's not going to fund certain kinds of healthcare decisions over others. So therefore, the state of California has to continue funding abortion through the Medi-Cal program, which is this bizarre interpretation of California's, the California state constitution, which protects a right to privacy, which apparently protects a right to abortion, which apparently protects a right to abortions being paid for by other people. But that's not the only crazy decision that our state Supreme Court made. I want to take us back to 1996 and 1997. Now, California's legislature had passed a law that would be upheld as constitutional under our federal constitution by Planned Parenthood versus Casey 1992. This law was about parental consent before a minor can get an abortion, all right? Under California law, as is the law in most places, there are a lot of things that minors can't legally consent to, okay? We basically think that minors lack the judgment, the experience, the intellect, the reasoning capacity necessary to agree to do certain kinds of things, a lot of different kinds of things, in fact. Traditionally, at common law, I don't think minors could sign contracts. In fact, I actually remember reading this, that Kobe Bryant, when he first signed with the LA Lakers, he was 17 years old, and his parents had to sign his first contract for him, for the Lakers, okay? And this is California law applying traditional common law principles that minors can't consent to contracts, okay? They're too young. Their consent is qualified or it isn't binding necessarily. So, yeah, Kobe Bryant, his mom and dad signed his first contract with the Los Angeles Lakers, right? So minors can't sign contracts for most kinds of medical care. Minors cannot consent to it. Certainly sex. Minors cannot in California to this day. No minor can consent legally to sex. Now, people sometimes stupidly think that if two 15-year-olds have sexual activity, that's not illegal or that's not statutory rape. It is. It's not really prosecuted much because if you have two 15-year-olds, who's the victim and who's the perpetrator? But if two 15-year-olds have sexual relations and maybe if they get pregnant, it's not impossible for prosecutors to request or require these young people to talk with public health officials or things like that. It's technically illegal for any minor to have sex in the state of California. And the notion is, rightly, minors lack the judgment necessary to agree to something with as many long-range effects as sex. Long-range effects as far as health, as far as well-being, as far as STDs, as far as pregnancy, childbirth, child care. Ergo, in California, not legal for minors to have sex. Now, California law, way before the legalization of abortion, had made an exception for prenatal care. And I guess the notion was that if a minor got pregnant, maybe the state was going to take the position of there had been some parental or familial breakdown already to allow this minor to get pregnant in the first place. Ergo, maybe it's a better public policy to let the minor have her prenatal care without the intervention of parents. But then in the context, the abortion became legalized afterwards, and abortion care was viewed as part and parcel with prenatal health care or reproductive care. And as a result, the standing law in California was to be that no parental involvement whatsoever in abortion. Our state legislature changed the law. They passed a law saying that no, before a minor can make a decision about something as momentous as abortion, their parents have to consent. Or if they want to get around their parents' consent, they need to get a court order. So, and this was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1992 in Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Planned Parenthood versus Casey was a Supreme Court decision that, for the most part, upheld the final holding of Roe v. Wade, basically that abortion has to be legal for all 9 months for any reason. But it did allow states to impose various kinds of health and safety requirements around abortion, including stuff about informed consent. And parents needing to sign off before their minor children could have an abortion kind of goes into that informed consent. In many, many areas of the law, we don't trust minors to make a lot of long-range decisions. We think that they lack the experience to do so for certain kinds of activities that have a long-term impact. Think of Kobe Bryant trying to sign his Lakers contract when he was 17. Think of, a minor trying to decide if he should have sex. For a lot of things, we don't trust minors to make decisions. Now, in 1996, California's state Supreme Court upheld this California law as in accordance with the California state constitution. Well, 2 new Supreme Court justices were appointed, and a year later, in 1997, the Supreme Court looked at the very same exact issue and came up with an opposite result. Now, it's apparently a violation of the California state constitution for the state government to require parents' consent to their minor children's abortions. Here's a write-up of this story from 1997. Citing a teenager's right to privacy. Teenagers' right to privacy from their own parents. This is a pretty radical notion in the history of American law, that teenagers have a right to privacy from their parents. The California Supreme Court today overturned the law here that requires minors to get parental consent or a judge's approval before having an abortion. The so-called parental consent law, why would it be so called? It's actually a very accurate description of the law. The so-called parental consent law, which was passed by the California legislature in 1987, generally has not been enforced as it wound its way through the courts. But it has been a lightning rod in both the abortion battle and the debate over the role of the courts in countering legislative actions. A number of other states have laws requiring parental consent for abortions for minors, and they have been upheld under the federal constitutional standards. But today's closely watched 4-3 ruling was based on a minor's right to privacy under the California state constitution, a right approved by voters here in 1972 and interpreted by the California courts more broadly than federal privacy protections. Okay, so again, what is this based off of? Remember in the first segment I talked about California in 1974, this came into effect, ratified a change to the state constitution. And that change right there in Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution. All people are by nature free and independent, have inalienable rights. Among these are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. Privacy. And as we said, privacy was the basis. Privacy was purported to be the basis under Roe v. Wade for legalized abortion. But even the U.S. Supreme Court never held that a right to privacy under the federal Constitution guarantees a right to have the government pay for your abortion. Never did the U.S. Supreme Court hold that a right to privacy applied to teenagers not being able to have some kind of parental oversight when their teenage daughter gets pregnant. But that's precisely what the California State Supreme Court did in 1997. Writing the majority opinion, California Chief Justice Ronald George wrote, "No one would doubt the value to a pregnant minor of wise and caring parental guidance and support, assuming such support is available and the minor is willing to seek it. But the justice added that the overturned law, quote, has its most significant impact in those instances in which a pregnant minor is too frightened or too embarrassed to disclose her condition to a parent." The decision was attacked by anti-abortion activists. Yeah, that's what we are. We're never pro-life. They're always pro-choice, but we're anti-abortion activists. And State Attorney General Dan Lundgren, who denounced judicial challenges to legislative authority. Californians regularly endure the rulings of federal judges who disregard the will of the electorate and their democratically elected representatives, Lundgren said. Unfortunately, today's majority decision provides an astonishingly similar example of disregard for legislative authority within our state courts. Lundgren was particularly incensed, as am I, that the parental consent law had been upheld by the California Supreme Court only last year. So this article was written in 1996. So 1996, the California Supreme Court says, yeah, California can have a law in the books requiring that minors get parental consent before they have abortions. Very next year, 2 justices change on the court, and all of a sudden the court says the exact opposite. Lundgren pointed out that when the California Supreme Court upheld the law in 1996, State Justice Stanley Mosk, speaking then for the majority, held that minors have fewer legal rights than adults, and that they cannot, without parental consent, obtain most medical services, including routine x-rays. I'll even note, it's not just like medical care. California takes the position that, all right, you're 17, you want to go to prom, you want to look good. It's not like it's something you do all the time. It's not like it's something you do habitually. It's not like you're begging to get skin cancer, but you say, "Hey, Mom, it's prom. I want to look good for the pictures. Can I go to a tanning salon?" Mom says, "You know what, sweetie, I'll take you to a tanning salon." This is not a conversation I will ever have with my daughter. I'm never taking her to a tanning salon because my mom's a dermatologist. So anyway, Mom goes with her 17-and-a-half-year-old daughter, her daughter who will turn 18 in a week. They go to a tanning salon in California and say, "Hi, I'm here to pay for my 17 years old and 350 days old daughter to get a tan here in your tanning salon." The owner of the tanning salon has to say, "Sorry, she's a minor. She can't get a tan in a tanning salon in California." "Why not?" asked the mom. "Because state law prohibits it. She's a minor. She can't make that decision for herself. We don't trust anyone to allow minors to have a tan." Minors can't buy beer. Minors can't buy alcohol. Minors can't buy cigarettes. But you know what a minor can do in this state? Get a surgical abortion during school hours with school employees driving her to and from a clinic without her mom or dad ever even knowing about it. That is legal here in California, and it's because of the activism of our state Supreme Court. Now, here's the question. What do we do about all of this? That's next, right here on Right to Life Radio, a production of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Thank you so much for listening. It's dance week here on Right to Life Radio. That's why we got Daft Punk, we had Jamiroquai, we got all the hits. All right. As we close out, for the last segment of this show, we've been talking about the California State Supreme Court. This is kind of an evergreen show, as we got to get Jamiroquai out of this. All right, there we go. They're gone. This show, the idea for this is to be kind of an evergreen show, maybe something you can listen to again later on, because it's not just the U.S. Supreme Court that issued a bunch of bad decisions that dominate our abortion law landscape. The California State Supreme Court issued a bunch of terrible decisions that dominate abortion law in California. As we said, bad California State Supreme Court decisions have mandated that, first of all, that California has to continue funding abortion directly through the Medi-Cal program. And California State Supreme Court overturned California laws requiring that minor children seek parental permission before they get abortions. Now, what do we do to fix it? With the U.S. Constitution, with the U.S. Supreme Court, we kind of see the way to fix bad decisions like Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. The path forward is fairly clear. You wait for Supreme Court justices to die or retire, and you replace them with people you like. Well, for those of us of a pro-life viewpoint, that's a pretty tall order in California, because the governor appoints justices to the state Supreme Court, and the odds of getting a good pro-life governor who's going to appoint solid judges are pretty slim, honestly. Now there is a recall election coming up, and maybe there's a chance for someone pro-life to be elected. I don't know. I think it's very likely this November we may be in the business of picking a new governor. But for the most part, I don't think our chances of shifting the balance of power on the California State Supreme Court, I don't think it's not going to happen very easily, okay? So, and it's not just that they have to be appointed by the governor. The choice by the governor has to get confirmed by the public, by the voters of California. If you picked a justice, like if you had Amy Coney Barrett's twin, okay, Jenny Coney Barrett, although I don't know why she would have the same last name, because Barrett is her husband's name. Anyway, so let's suppose let's suppose Amy Coney Barrett has a twin sister named Jenny. Jenny Coney. Let's suppose we elected a great governor for California who's super pro-life. He picks Jenny Coney to be the next justice on the Supreme Court. Well, then the voters of California have to confirm the choice. And let me tell you, if Jenny Coney were on the ballot in California, she would face a public opposition like nothing you'd ever see, and the pro-choice electorate in the state of California would probably reject her. So how do we change things? Well, in California, one thing we can do is change the state constitution through ballot initiatives. Now, to get a state constitutional amendment onto the ballot is pretty hard. To do that, it requires gathering a ton of signatures, and it's a very difficult process to do. We tried repeatedly to do this in the context of parental consent for abortion, because basically our state legislature passed a law requiring the parents' consent before a minor's abortion. It was upheld by the Supreme Court in 1996, and then upheld by the California Supreme Court in 1996, struck down in 1997, and then we had repeated attempts to try to pass a constitutional amendment, and they qualified for the ballot. We voted on it as a state on a number of occasions, and it never passed. And that's the difficult thing about this state. And this is just John Girardi giving his opinion on the Republican Party in California. This is not endorsing or opposing any parties or candidates. The Republican Party of California thought that their path forward was to be really fiscally conservative and to give up on social conservative issues. That they thought was the way forward. And I think that was a tragic mistake. I think there are a lot of socially conservative Democrats in this state, a lot of Latino Democrats who are far more pro-life than the people they vote for would indicate. And I think if the California Republican Party had been more willing to bend on fiscal conservative issues and more willing to embrace a vigorous platform of social conservatism, I think we all would have been better off. I think that the state of California would maybe not have been so, it would not have become such a ruthlessly pro-choice environment. And maybe, not that, again, I'm not endorsing or opposing Republicans or anything on this show, but I think you could have seen a much more viable Republican Party if they had embraced social conservatism rather than fiscal conservatism. That'll do it for us. We'll see you next week on Right to Life Radio, rtlcc.org.